You know what you should do is write down on the bottom, put disclaimer. Uh-oh, my mic is live. I can't say that anymore. Trip by the Tim and Joel Show. Okay, are any of you sick and tired of death by PowerPoint yet? I mean, it's only Tuesday afternoon. If you haven't been killed by PowerPoint yet, you're not working hard enough at it. Sorry, guys, no slides. Standard disclaimer: if we talk about anything that's forward-looking, take that with more than a grain of salt. Okay. Yeah, a block of salt. Exactly, Brian Perry. You got that right. All right, folks, this is about your questions, about your wondering. What are you wondering about? And I got tokens. So you guys participate and we will help you. My name is Tim Burkland. I'm part of the Tim and Joel Show. I've been with VMware for 9 years and contracting before that, so I've got a little bit of experience. Mine's primarily been in NSX, but I am so honored and pleased to be just half of the Tim and Joel Show. I'll let Joel introduce himself. We call him Mr. Full Stack or the Wizard of the Whiteboard. You can take your pick after this presentation.
Hey, everybody.
Uh-oh, you're not on.
I'm all right. Oh, on?
Can't hear you. Speak up, Joel.
I'm all right. I'm here.
There you go.
Hey, everybody. Joel West. So I've been working with VMware Technologies about 14 years, with Cisco 10 years before that. Yeah, I've worked with every VMware product, been lucky enough to do that. And when VCF came along, it was kind of a good fit for me because it's a little bit of everything. We wanted to make this interactive, because I could put a canned slideshow up here, but if you don't know anything about VCF, we can talk about that. If you know a little about VCF and you have questions, we can talk about that. We've had a lot of conversations, especially last night, about use cases. This idea of why are there so many workload domains? What could you do with multiple workload domains? Why do I care about that? And they threw out, we got a lot of scenarios thrown at us last night.
Sure did.
So we thought, just dispense with the slides. We'll get a couple of points from you guys. And honestly, if you give us one good one, that'll take 25 minutes. So,
well, the original presentation was presented by a gentleman named Stephen DeBarros. I want to give him a shout out because he's the one that actually presented it. But he lives far, far away in Canada, and he couldn't make the trip. So Joel and I said, yeah, we'll step in, we'll help out. And I recruited him because I was on the thing. I said, Joel, you need to help me out here because it's a Tim and Joel show. It won't be any good without you. So these tokens are for you all to participate and give us what you want to know. Joel could work this whiteboard. I mean, it's a blackboard, right? But it's a whiteboard. He can work that and take you through implementation, management domain, workload domains, multiple workload domains, yada, yada, yada. And we'd run out of time. So if you have, this is supposed to be tips and tricks from the experts.
I don't know about that.
What do you want to know? What do you want to know? Yes, sir.
Yeah.
See, watch this, everybody. Watch this.
Do you recommend using passive rotations or just manually changing them yourself?
Yeah, so one of the things that, and what he's asked is password rotation. So this is kind of making some assumptions, but within VCF, and I always draw this in pink because my really good friend likes pink, and she talks about SDDC Manager all the time in pink. We have this other layer of management, and what this allows to do is I have so many components. If we think about basic VCF environment, you've got obviously vSphere, you've got NSX, we potentially have ARIA. So how do I coordinate all of this? One of the things of having sort of the centralized intelligence of all of your inventory objects is now with anything from lifecycle management, as we would talk about with upgrades or passwords or certificates, have a centralized way to do that. I would do, and there's not much restriction, particularly moving into 5.2. I would do everything I can from SDDC Manager, just because there's two things. One, you've got this centralized way of managing everything. But number two, is anybody deployed VCF? So anytime you deploy anything in VCF, what happens? Before the deployment, you get this extensive list of pre-checks. Right? It's almost foolproof because it has awareness of inventory objects, what the status of those inventory objects with other inventory objects that it's working with, conflict, no conflict, incompatibility. So before you do anything, it runs through that. So that to me is probably the largest advantage of utilizing SDDC Manager. Yeah.
That's an awesome question, by the way. And you know that little thing I gave you? That is worth a McLaren dry fit t-shirt when you step out the door. Yeah. So who else has a question?
Go ahead. NSXT as their public static firewall, or separate firewall?
The industry?
That's a question for you.
The industry? That's tough on the industry.
Yeah.
Several different people say several different things.
So,
well, you'll hear somebody else say something different.
We'll repeat the question just to make sure everybody understands.
That's true.
His asset of NSXT is industry standard firewall, or we're using something else.
And you've heard different things from different people, is what you said, and you have a token already, so I don't have to answer the question, but I'm going to. I'm going to. You asked it to get the token. I would put my opinion in that you can't have too many firewalls unless it starts impacting performance. So I love the idea of defense in depth. And if I can go right down to that workload's VNIC with a firewall, I am hugely in favor of that, as long as I'm smart enough to not build a list that's 2,000 rules long. As long as I used what NSXT calls the applied to field, if I use that applied to field appropriately and keep my rule list per workload to 20 or 30 or something, it's going to fly, you fools. It's going to go very efficiently to firewall. And then if you've got perimeter guard, even a gateway firewall and a perimeter firewall, you know, you're protecting yourself. You can't have too many. So I'm not the industry, but that's my opinion. Yeah. You bet. I don't know who's first. Did you have a hand up, or are you just trying to get a token?
I've got a very large environment of like 25 resellers.
Yeah.
4,000.
Okay.
His question was, he's got this huge environment with 10 million virtual machines and 25,000 vCenters. Okay, I'm exaggerating. I have a tendency to do that on occasion. But his question is, how well will the import work? We started it here in 5.2, and now I will just step back as my Mr. Whiteboard is handling the whiteboarding.
All right, so just to kind of get a little frame of reference here before we dive into this, because this is what's important. If you don't know about the basic architecture with VCF, it's called the management domain. That's the first thing that's built. That's the brains of operation. Then you're going to build subsequent numbers of workload domains, right? Aptly named, that's where workloads run. Now, depending on what single sign-on methodology that you use, you have a limit in a VCF instance about how many workload domains you could have, which ties back to the vCenter. Each workload domain has a dedicated vCenter. Okay, so let's say that we had one SSO. That means that I am limited to 14 workload domains if I'm using a single SSO. That is because the vCenters are working in enhanced link mode. So management plus my 14 is 15. I'm at a limit. Now, if you work in banking, finance, healthcare, and you're using multiple single sign-on domains, you can have up to 24 workload domains as long as you don't exceed 4. Once you hit that 14, right, I've hit my enhanced link mode limit. Does that make sense? If I wanted to smoke crack and say, let's have 24 single sign-on domains, you could have everything separate. So it addresses the use case. So to your point, if I had 25 vCenters, in most cases, I'd probably have to have 2 VCF instances. Okay, I want everybody to be cool with that. Now, let's talk a little bit about that. You'll hear in every presentation about stretched clusters, blah, 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 and business continuity, disaster recovery. Who here has a network that can support stretched clusters? Raise your hand. Do you have 2 sites with the 5 millisecond? No. So
anybody raise their hand, they're going to get a token. No, it's not going to happen.
He's got one. Give him a token.
He does? Really?
So, so in most cases, I'm going to have multiple VCF instances anyway for one reason or another. So in your case, there's 2 things. If I want to migrate, so here is my, and I'll do this in a little bit larger. So here's my brownfield environment. Here is my VCF. 2 ways to do this. You can stand up VCF. I've got clean workload domains. We could use something like HCX to migrate. Now, because that is external, right? It's another product to manage. It's other appliances. What you're going to see in 5.2, and this is a new feature in 5.2. In 5.2, you have the import feature. So the advantage with this is that back here, and the reason I drew this is the management domain historically only supported vSAN. Now, most people moving forward just said, well, I've got some fiber channel or whatever. I'm going to use that for supplemental storage. I'm going to use fiber channel. I'm going to use vSAN across the board because I'm typically ordering new hardware. My OEM is just giving me a scalable hardware platform. We're just going to go with vSAN, keep everything simple, and that's fine. But if you have non-vSAN storage, and I was trying to do an import from the ground up, that was sometimes a problem for some people. I'm like, it slowed down the migration because it's a different kind of storage. We're not familiar with it. Could I use my existing storage? And the answer to that until 5.2 was no. Management domain was vSAN only. You could use fiber channel NFS on your workload domains. With 5.2, I can utilize NFS and fiber channel to import over. So this is a huge change. Now, I haven't done one yet, so I'm just going to say it works great. I did the first 4 commercial deployments of VCF back in 2021. Middle of the pandemic, I did them remote. They were in Europe. Nothing was even racked and stacked right. I know everything that can go wrong with a VCF deployment that has nothing to do with VCF. Right? That has nothing to do with VCF. It ain't racked right, it ain't racked right.
Everything that could go wrong? Everything that could go wrong?
I'll say 99.9%. But in your case, if you're going to go to vSAN, this is just my opinion. It's a lot easier. It's a lot cleaner to go with vSAN, particularly for the management domain. That's the way it's designed to work. But this new import function, we're trying to be as widely compatible as we can with existing brownfield environments and remove hurdles. People are like, that's honest truth, right? We have a lot of customers that are coming from just a vSAN environment. We're trying to do a quantum leap to VCF. They weren't even what we would call HCI, right? They weren't using vSAN. So they're missing a lot of the interim tools. They can spell NSX, but I don't even know anything about that besides NSX. So a lot of challenges. So that's the reason why this additional storage support. So the good news is for right now, 5.2 moving forward, you got a ton of choices. What's going to happen over the next several months between 5.2 and 9.0 is all of this component look where everything is still a little bit separate is going to continue to fade, and everything is going to look as one product. Now, we'll still have several functions underneath it, but we're not going to have 15 different UIs that I have to deal with. But so to your point, if I've got a really, really large environment, you're probably going to want to have at least 2 instances anyway. Theoretically, you could probably get away with it, but you have to have all these separate single sign-on domains, which nobody has anyway. Banking, finance, healthcare is very common. I've done a lot of work with that. I did a lot of work with the Marine Corps. You know, you got multiple single sign-on domains, but not 24, but multiple ones.
So I have a question. How do you spell NSX? It's no longer a thing, right?
No, it's no longer a thing. All right.
Yes, you were next.
I'm a service provider.
Mm-hmm.
So my question is that I'm new to this here. We have vCloud Director, with service providers use.
Yeah.
So when we have to migrate to this here, how will the VCD vCloud Director be impacted by this? Is this a part of the management plane you said in the previous?
Management domain. Yeah.
I don't know.
So he said, if you haven't heard him, he said he's a service provider, and he's been running vCloud Director. He's been running, and now he wants to do VCF. And what is that basic impact? And I'm definitely going to leave that one to the whiteboard wizard here.
So what we've seen so far, and where I've seen this the most, is in Europe, where they're actually acting as smaller service providers, is that they use the management domain. This management domain kind of becomes that top instance, and then your workload domains as you come down through here. And I'm glad you asked that question, because this can potentially bring up some other good points with VCF. Is that if this is, a customer instance, each workload domain by itself is kind of a container. It can be, again, a single sign-on point. It can be a collection of certain hardware configuration if you want it to be. Sometimes internally, let's say I'm a large enterprise and I want to, in the same VCF instance, have regular VI workload domains. I want to have some AI already that's potentially 2 different hardware footprints. And maybe I want to have a small VDI instance for my POS or in stations or whatever else. That's another hardware. What you want to do is between the workload domain, keep the hardware the same, because then in lifecycle management, it's the same image. It keeps things simple. So this is what we've seen so far. I think, probably over the next 12 months, we're going to see some more with this as we get further adoption. So that's how it compares. It would just be a migration. I don't know behind the scenes what would happen with SKUs and licensing. That's a question I can take back. Just after, make sure I have your email. I'll follow up and I'll get an answer for you. But that's really kind of architecturally what's happening, is that those instances now are just moved over to workload domain, and I'm going to treat that just like I would have previously.
And I know you just wanted the token to match your jackets.
He's got the jacket, man. He's going to be all outfitted for Formula One.
Did you have your hand up, Jeremy?
I did.
Here, because you had your hand up. You bet.
So my question might seem dumb, but
No dumb question.
No.
say I've got an environment kind of like he just described,
Mhm.
large, 150 hosts, 2,500 virtual machines, and I want to start using VCF. Where do you start?
No,
Where do you start?
yeah, excellent question.
That's one of the best questions you could possibly ask at a conference like this. Let's get with an expert. Yeah, absolutely. I would start by paying the money for the license, but that's just me.
Yes.
All right, so you're going to start with your management domain, right? I got to start with that. So one of the cool things is if you work with a particular OEM, we have very tight partnerships with the OEMs. If you gave them your VM footprint, what your resources are, they can say based off what their new hardware is, what you guys want to use, how much you want to pack these out. They can say, here's the host. Once you look at the number of hosts, do I need more than one workload domain? So let's talk about a couple of things. We always want to make sure that we have the right number of resources and also follow your growth plan. Cool thing about all the OEMs, right? They're on subscription just like everybody else. So most of you guys dealing with subscription with your OEMs right now. So if you need to move up, it's easy, right? The OEMs make it easy. They're VCF partners. It's not a software problem. Now it's not a hardware problem. So the other question is, how many workload domains would I need? Well, I can have multiple clusters in a workload domain. I can have up to 64 nodes. So am I over that with my VMs? Simple answer. They're all VI workload domains. I just have multiple ones because of the sheer number of VMs that I have. That's answer number one. So if I need, we'll do it this way, number of workload domains, a couple of things. Number one is just sheer number of VMs or just your resources, right? You're going to have 5 VI workload domains just because I needed that much hardware behind it, and I have a hardware limit of the number of nodes per workload domain. The next thing would be types of workloads. So this is a classic example I give. We have a lot of customers that are experimenting with things like Tanzu. They have old applications. Am I just going to refactor this? Or am I going to build this from scratch? Is it going to be a true modern application? So if I had my VI workload domains, these are the same admins that we've had. I know these people, I'm not worried about them. If I go in here and now and enable, and by the way, SDDC Manager is always pink, Tanzu is always purple. Don't ask me why, this is it. Tanzu is here. So if I think about building a Tanzu enable workload domain. So, in your case, it's not a need, but I'm going to something new. Maybe we want to look at modernizing applications. What does that mean? Who's going to be accessing this now? You're going to have developers, all sorts of people doing that. So another cool thing about having multiple workload domains is you can have an NSX instance for each one. You don't have to. You can share. But this has got an NSX instance that is totally separate from the NSX running my workload domains, right? This is DevOps, this is experimental, this is looking at applications, this is where I'm making my money. These people don't have access to this or vice versa. So then not only did you containerize it from the role-based access, but you don't even have to worry about somebody messing up networking because I don't have access to these different NSX managers. So that's where I would start is, that's always the biggest question. How many workload domains do I need? I would say if you only got one type of workload and you can have it work hardware-wise, have one. All right,
Don't keep it simple.
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
Keep it simple.
But the cool thing is that you can always add them. I mean, it's nothing to add a workload domain. So I would start out, keep things simple because you're already running into some new stuff. You've heard several people, even I've been sitting in here for the last 2 sessions. Everybody's talked about ARIA. Right now we have access to ARIA. I'm going to be using those tools that I might not have used before because licensing was a barrier. Well, now I'm getting it anyway. So now you have much better forward visibility to everything that's happening. Right? You can be super proactive with what's happening with resources, storage, networking. So that tells me I got plenty of time. It's like, yeah, within the next few weeks, I need to build another workload domain and start standing some stuff up.
I always worry when I hear an expert say it's nothing to whatever. It's nothing to add a workload domain.
It is easy.
It's easy, but it's not nothing, Joel.
How about one?
How about one? There you go. Yes, sir.
So you said it's easy to add a workload domain.
It is very easy to add a workload. Just ask him.
Have you fixed the problem where if you're not using zero, dig zero, that you have to dig out?
Yeah, there were some bugs around that in 5.2. I was looking through the list again. I'm still just, yeah. A lot of that has been trying to deal with 2 kinds of development going on at the same time. Those teams are now working better together. So I know there's going to be, in 5.2, there was a lot more API-driven deployment introduced. I think we'll see more of that, and a lot of those bugs will get fixed as we go.
Usually on like a vSAN ready node, dig zero is the 1 gig bit.
Yeah.
And your 20 or 50 or 40 gig bits are like 4 and 6.
Yeah. So, yeah, and something he's asking here, just to draw a little picture of it. If
the whiteboard wizard.
If we're looking at the way NICs are hardware addressed, I didn't even try to draw a circle.
I know,
It did it
that's
for
pretty
me.
good. That's pretty good.
And just to give, this is a little bit of insight. This goes back to what I said. Some of you were smiling when I said it was not racked and properly. It goes back to this. By default, if you just take the defaults on install, it's looking for 0 and 1 to be your active NICs. You can change to 4 NICs, 6 NICs, right? There's other ways of doing it. If you go beyond 2, as you said, the preferred way to do all of this moving forward is API. So problem with some of this is that if these are not, let's say this was maybe the management NIC or whatever, you have to be careful about how this is. You have to know how your OEM is configured. I think the OEMs have done a better job of adjusting some of that hardware addressing from what I've seen. But it's a good point. You need to know that going in because it is going to cause a problem in the deployment. One thing I will say, and I go back to version, actively doing it, I started with some of the older ones, but when I was really doing deployment, it was 3 and 4. If you had something wrong out of the box, it was pretty difficult to fix it. I could sit there and troubleshoot it, or I could just scrub everything and start over. That was usually faster. It's much easier now to go back and add things. You can add things, you can change deployment types. Even with, we talked about the 5.2 importing, you can even add NSX later if you want to. So there's a lot of changes coming about, and a lot of that, based on your question, is just because things are becoming more API driven. I can get hooks into that stuff under the hood, make it easier for the customer to do some of those things after the fact. Yeah. How much time we got?
I think we're out of time, but that's okay. Yes, sir. You said they haven't warned us. They haven't shut us off. So we're still running.
We got 1 minute.
Just want to confirm. So it's one management domain, one workload, right? And
There's only, yeah, in a VCF instance, there's only one management domain. That's all you need. Yeah.
One quick,
Two,
two quick, two
Two,
quick, 3 of them.
No, they just want they want t-shirts now.
Go. Say it.
What'd it say?
Again?
Can different workload domains have different versions?
Can different workload domains have different versions of ESXi? Or do they have to be the same?
You could technically do it, but your lifecycle management is going to be really tough.
Yeah.
There are minimum versions on any BOM for VCF. There's whatever the minimum version is, and that's going to be really important moving forward in the 5.2 import. So for management, it's 8U3. For workload, it's 7U3. So want to be careful with some of that. That's probably a very specific use case. Get with some of my professional services, or you can shoot me an email. I'll help you out. All right. Well,
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for attending. We are not going to shut it off. Well, we're going to shut it off, but we'll go right over here and answer any more questions that you have. Just right out here so you guys can get ready for the next. Forget to do a survey and say, that guy with the beard, man, he was good. Thank you.